What made you come up with this idea to do something out of the box and different at WrestleMania?
It is a match that, in storyline, I created. In reality, if it was a song, I co-wrote it with Brian Gewirtz, who was the head writer of Raw at the time. He's now one of the top executives for Rock's $7 Productions company. He was always Rock's guy, but I worked a lot with him as well. He's very smart. And once again, like I said earlier, knowing that you would ask me this question, I planted some seeds. When I told you guys that sometimes you get to a WrestleMania and guys just don't have anything, there's no plans for them. So that was what was happening that year. Once again, it was Edge, it was Benoit, it was Jericho. And I remember one of the ideas pitched was a 3-way submission match. Now, going back to my 3-way 2 out of 3 falls belt match, I already had PTSD about 3 ways at WrestleMania. Throw in the fact that it's a submission match, do you know how hard that would be and how boring that would be? The only way you can win is by submitting somebody. Edge doesn't even have a submission. How are we going to do this? So it's like, we got to think of something. And then suddenly it's like, well, Kane doesn't have anything, and Christian doesn't have anything. It's like a whole bunch of, and Shelton Benjamin was getting a big push at the time. Nobody has any plan or angle. So Brian and I were talking about something, and they're trying to figure it out. I said, what if we have like a ladder match where the winner gets a title shot on Raw the next night? And I said, because he was like, well, what could be at stake? Because usually you have a belt up there. And I was like, we'll put a piece of paper, like, on a string with a clothespin. But the thing that was different to me as well was that we've never had a 6-way ladder match where every man is for himself. They had tag team ladder matches. It was 6 guys, but it was Dudley's, Edge, and Christian, Hardy's, etc. So I thought, it's cool on 2 points. One, everybody's for himself, which we hadn't seen. Now it happens every week, but at that point in time, it never happened. 2, then we have something at stake which everybody would want, which is a title shot. So then Brian and I were talking, kind of going back. He said, well, what if we make it for a year? That way we don't have to put a date on it. If you win this Money in the Bank contract, you can use it at any point in time over the next year. And then he said, well, it's like having money in the bank. It's like you have your cash in the bank. You can use it whenever you want, but you know you have it. So it's the Money in the Bank match. That sounds really cool. Let's pitch it to Vince and see what he says. And anytime that happened, I wasn't privy to the pitches, so I would have to wait. And you'd be like waiting, like, look at your phone. Boop, boop. Go away, Mom. You know, waiting for Brian to get back to you. And he finally called me. He's like, Vince loves it. He loves it, but he has one condition. Sure, what is it? It has to be in a briefcase. The contract has to be in a briefcase. And it has to be that way. And I was like, okay. Which, once again, though, if you know the genius of Vince, what he's the best at, like he would always say, he'd come up with something, and then I'd say, well, how am I supposed to do that? And he's like, I don't know. I just booked this shit. You make it work. So then I would make it work, but it was almost like he would look at this cup right here, and I'd tell him what I was planning on doing, and he would sit there in silence. Now, if you and I were having a conversation and I just went silent, your initial thought, instinct would be fill the silence with talking. That's not what you do with Vince. If he wants to sit there in silence for 20 minutes, don't say a word because he's thinking, right? And then he would go, how about if we did this? And not literally, but figuratively, take this cup, this idea that I have, and go, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so much better. Like, just that little twist just made things from good to great. And that's what Vince does best. So by coming up with the briefcase, it's awesome because, like I said, like a piece of paper on a string or whatever, it's stupid. But the briefcase is a briefcase, and you can use it, you can carry it, you can use it as a weapon, but it's something you have to hand in. It's a viable item that looks kind of cool. And you can sell them at the merch stand as well, which is probably... So that was his, and that was it. So we were ready to go. Problem was, Edge didn't want to do it. And he was like, what do you mean he doesn't want to do it? He doesn't want to do it because he had just come back from injury. He felt he was the ladder match guy and was not into the idea of doing another ladder match. I said, he's winning the thing. Just who cares? Just do it. So finally, we got him on board, and then, once again, I remember the first time we went to this tent. They had set up outside of the Staples Center, I believe, or wherever Mania was that year. And we're just sitting there, and it's like the same thing with Stadium Stampede or Anarchy in the Arena or any of these matches. You just sit down and go like, all right, what are we going to do? And you just kind of hang out for a bit, and like, well, what if we put up a ladder and put a ramp on it, and Shelton runs up the ramp and clotheslines me off the ladder? Oh, that's good. Write that down. Well, what if we do this? Then you write that down. Then each guy contributes like 5 or 6 ideas, and then you start shaping it and where it should all be. And then suddenly you got something. And the best thing about those matches is you might watch them and go, how do they remember all this stuff? And my answer is, you don't have to remember everything. You just remember, it's like a chain. You remember your parts of the chain. As soon as Shelton runs up the ladder, I come in and do this, and then I get knocked out. And then I wait for Christian to do a drop kick, then I'm back in. And that's kind of how you work it. And the best part of it was the match was really going good, and the crowd was going into it. And I had the idea of Shelton running up the ladder because he's like a cat, very graceful. And he hit me on top of the ladder, and I fell to the mat, and I rolled to the floor, and I'm on the floor. I look up, and looking right over at me is Adam Sandler and Rob Schneider. Ooh, what a wrestling mate. Oh, what am I do? And I remember just looking at him going, what a way to make a living, Adam. And he popped. I got Adam Sandler to laugh at WrestleMania. So once again, all you care about is that the match is good. And we've had matches before. If you remember the Superstar Scramble, I won the world title in the Scramble. It was such a stupid concept, we never did it again. Money in the Bank, not only was it so good, they did it every year, and now it actually has its own pay-per-view, and the guys are having one, and the girls are having one, and the little people are having one, and the hermaphrodites are having one, and everybody's having one. So it shows that when you don't have anything going on in wrestling or anything in life, don't complain about it. Put your heads together and come up with something cool and make stuff happen, and that's what we did.